So welcome everyone to the November meeting of the Bennington School District Board of Directors. Before we start with the agenda, I'd like a motion to add 2 items to the agenda. First, I'd like an executive session immediately following the Green Lantern solar net metering proposal, please.
So moved.
There are actually 3 purposes. Thank you for that, Dr. Kelly. There are 3 purposes for that executive session. One falls under, the first is subsection A1, which talks about contracts, labor relations, agreements with employees, arbitration, etc. Also number 2, which discusses the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase options. And then also subsection A5, a clear and imminent peril to the public safety. So those 3 reasons, subsections A1, A2, and A5. So Dr. Kelly, is that your motion?
Correct.
And I'll second it.
Thank you very much. So I have a first and second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor of adding the executive session to the agenda as item number 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Also, I would like to add an agenda item following policies to discuss Act 46. There's a new question we've been asked to consider, and we should do that together.
I was going to do that as part of my superintendent's report, but if you want to not.
Well, I'll ask you, do you have a preference to do it as part of your superintendent's report?
Nope,
And then
just
we will have a
understand
discussion about it?
We can do it any way we want. I just won't, if we want to discuss it then that was really the
So
bulk of my report. So.
Let's do that then.
Okay.
All right, very good.
I said mine too.
So that's it. Any other items to add to the agenda? Anyone? Okay, so hearing none. So we'll start it off. Number 1, public comments, please. Public comments going once, twice, and 3 times. So now we're up to number 2, which is the Green Lantern solar net metering proposal. So, Ms. Gordon, I'm wondering if you happen to have any additional information on that? Okay. Would you mind stepping the microphone for just a moment, please? So we have the group net metering agreement that was distributed via email. Essentially, this is my understanding of it. Maybe you could. I'm looking directly at you as the expert because you're standing up. No pressure. I'm hoping you can clarify that this is the correct understanding. This is my reading of it. It's a 20-year agreement. As it's proposed, we would be paying 90% of what we would otherwise be paying.
So we would be purchasing the credits at 90% of the value.
Yep.
So yes, at a 10% discount.
And then with that comes an annual audit that carries the chance of reimbursement if for some reason the numbers didn't quite work out. So the worst case scenario is that we'd be paying 90% in credits toward our electrical use. Let me ask my 2 questions, and then we'll offer the questions for everyone else. And as I offer these questions, and as the other questions are asked, if anyone else sitting at the table has insight, please go ahead.
Yeah, and I thought Ralph.
He said he was coming.
I thought too. Yeah.
So should we wait?
So
Should we hold this discussion possibly until he gets here?
I mean that would make sense to me. And so again, a question for everyone sitting here at the table in terms of parliamentary procedure and Robert's rules, can we stray from the posted order of the agenda, which is what we would have to do if we were going to.
I think if we're just reshuffling what's already existing.
I'm not an expert in parliamentary procedure, but my understanding is if you, just like you amended the agenda before the meeting, you can make a motion to
Amend
the agenda,
Shuffle.
amend the order. Yeah.
Hearing that, could I please have a motion to move item number?
Do we have an ETA?
I spoke with him this afternoon, and he said he was planning on coming. But it wasn't like a 100%.
At 6 o'clock or 7?
Does he know the 6
Oh,
o'clock
does-
new time? Okay.
Yeah, here I gave him directions on how to get here.
Great.
Okay.
So I feel like perhaps we could move into policies, report out from the SVSU reps, and hear from our building principals. And then hopefully by that point, Ralph or someone else from Green Lantern will be available. So could I please have a motion to jump to item number 6? Merity moved it. Could I have a second for that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you, Jackie.
I guess you could table it too until he arrives.
Yeah, we'll kick it off at 6. Okay, so any discussion about jumping ahead to item number 6? Hearing none, all those in favor of jumping ahead to item number 6, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So here we are at policies. So tonight we're to warn policy number 5180. It's an amendment, it's an amended policy around tobacco prohibition. And basically it adds language to address vaping and juuling in schools by anyone, by students, staff, and visitors. So could I have a motion to warn 5180 as distributed?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. We'll call that for Merity. Any discussion about warning 5180? Hearing none, all those in favor of warning 5180, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we have warned it. Dan, since Shayla's not here, would you mind giving us a report out from the SVSU, please?
Yes, so the substantive discussion that we had will be repeated this evening, I think, with Laura's presentation. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm not going to bore you with that. Laura will do a much better job than I could of doing that presentation. And we'll also be talking about Act 46 tonight, which we talked about in SVSU. So I'm going to defer to the superintendent's report and to the assistant superintendent regarding SVSU matters that were discussed.
Okay.
So
Anything else from the SVSU?
that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. So if our building principals are ready, we can jump into educational matters, please.
I'm going to do the slideshow. We're doing part of Mr. Lee. Did you guys have anything to share before that? Yeah. We're all in one tonight.
Yeah, this is all,
Okay.
so their report is also part of the superintendent's
Great.
report, so that,
So let's jump to the superintendent's report.
all right.
Do you want me to do the reading street?
You had asked for an update on the reading street.
Please.
I'll do that first.
All
I'll
right.
do the reading street first. Okay.
Yeah, this was a request from at a previous meeting about the reading program.
So, here we go. Okay. So, while I'm sharing, we'd like you to look at the Reading Street materials, okay?
So we're just gonna have them out and about here. Okay, take a look. Ready, like a little pack. Drop some down here. Oops, nothing was down here. Thanks. You can exchange, share.
So, what's this? So, just a reminder that in May of 2017, we shared the SVSU literacy needs assessment that we completed. And one of the findings in the literacy needs assessment was that we, as an SVSU, listed 82 different primary resources for reading instruction. Just want that to settle for a minute. And so the recommendation that came out in literacy needs assessment was we really needed to hone in and find a primary resource that was consistent throughout. So we made the Reading Street purchase last year for K through 2 as a start to build that foundation as a primary resource to align with our curriculum. It was through a team effort. We have an SVSU ELA team that's composed of teachers and interventionists and SPED teachers and administrators and district staff as well. And they spent the year reviewing and looking for a program that aligned with our curriculum and that also was evidence-based. And so what you see in front of you is just a sampling of the K through 2 piece. So the materials arrived at the end of last year. We received technical assistance from Reading Street during the spring of last year. Teachers in our district have found it helpful to receive things in advance so they can look at it over the summer and do some planning and preparing, and that was our goal. We then as part of our purchase, was they provide technical assistance. They come once in the fall and met with teachers to answer questions. There's also a digital platform as well that all teachers have a membership to, and as I'm here tonight with our data coach, Melissa Senecal, and she houses the digital access, so every teacher has access to that, and the technical assistance we received supported that piece as well. So how are we using this primary resource? We, our schools, and we have our 3 BSD schools here tonight, use Reading Street during their protected reading time in each of their buildings. We are primarily using Reading Street to focus on literary comprehension, informational, looking at informational text and vocabulary instruction. It also supports part of our writing piece. and our grammar. And we use, and still consistently use Foundations as our primary resource for the other components, phonics and phonological awareness. So we just wanted to give you a little picture. Maybe.
Well, one of our questions, may I?
Please.
One of our questions was, are the teachers being monitored as to the fidelity that they're placing on the program?
Yeah, Jackie, that's a great question. So we also are receiving support this year from the Hill for Literacy, and one of the cool connections that we've been able to make is she's really helping us in our buildings focus on, when we look at that literacy block, where are you using, where's Foundations and where is it dedicated, and we're monitoring that, and then this is where you use Reading Street, and so teachers are getting exposure to that. So compared to, I remember a time when Scholastic showed up on my doorstep in my classroom here at Bennell, and there it was, okay, and it was great because you had it, but we're trying to be really intentional in making sure that teachers have the support that they need to implement this and find what we're really doing, which I think is different from my prior experience, is that we're really trying to go through this resource. We're being trained how to go through the resource and find the best lessons that match the standards that we teach to. So that's how we're using it right now.
Any other questions?
I had a quick
Please.
question.
Yeah.
And Laura, I apologize if I'm asking in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I noticed you said this was a K through 2 focus for
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
I was reading the minutes from the October meeting where I wasn't present, and
Yeah.
I had a question about support for grades 3 through 5.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
how I read the minutes was that the grades 3 through 5 are being supported in a more of a coaching role, but I wondered how our grades 3 through 5 readers are being supported, if they're receiving title services or...
Yeah, oh yeah, yes.
So we have a title teacher
So we have
for...
a reading, so there are reading, we have reading coach at in Bennell and Molly Stark, and interventionists in the 3 buildings providing support. And we are, the professional learning that's happening at K through 2 is then mirrored through the coaches at 3 through 5. And then we use our district platform for any school that doesn't, so we include all 3 schools, have representation on that committee. So we're trying to create these communication feeds so everyone is getting the same information. And the ELA team is looking at how we definitely want to build this up. So we want to have primary resources at 3 through 5. Right now, we are still depending on Scholastic.
Okay.
And we have a digital online membership to Newsella, which is a wonderful evidence-based resource at the whole district. That was a district purchase, so we can use that as well, but that's what we're building towards.
Okay.
So we're trying to make sure our foundation is solid, and now we're building forward.
So would a struggling reader in like 3rd grade, for example, would they have access to, so would their teacher have access to a coach? Or would they also receive like small group instruction from like a title reading interventionist or something at that level?
Sure. So, oh, you have to
Okay. No, it's not good money. It's not the first time to give anything. Okay.
So part of my role at Molly Stark is I'm on the literacy committee. And one of the things that we're focusing on is literacy growth. And we have a coach at Molly. And what we do is we go through the coaching system with the Hill Literacy, and we focus on grades 1K1 and 2. And then the next day or a week later, our coach goes out and turnkeys that same literacy work with grades 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
So they're getting the benefit of the support we're getting from Hill on a direct coaching to teacher basis. In addition to that, part of that work is identifying intervention groups, so which learners in grades 3, 4, and 5 need reading intervention.
Mhm.
And then that coach helps the interventionist set those intervention groups, identify the target of that intervention group, and then monitor progress of those learners within that group.
Right.
So we also have some additional curriculum tools this year in Newsella that our teachers are using, and then our coaches are supporting the implementation of.
Okay.
So does that help?
Yes, and I'm sorry we diverted a little bit from Reading Street. It's just when I read those minutes, I thought, okay, are we just coaching teachers? Or are we giving real support to kids too? Thank you.
Okay,
Anything
ready for
else?
next part?
Yep, ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so I'll keep the materials there in case you want to take a look at them. So we're going to jump. Let me just switch
I'm
gears
reading.
here. Okay. Okay.
We can get you a coach, Jackie. We can get you a coach.
No, I don't need one.
So this is our annual report out, and we'll be projecting. I'm gonna give you guys a color copy. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have yours? Over, Jenny. There you go. So we're here tonight to present our annual report. It's been a year since we've met, and we're going to start by giving you the district overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to our building principals to share their piece. So we're going to jump right in. Thank you. So the first thing we want to share is about Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the shift from No Child Left Behind to now we're following the regulations in Every Student Succeeds Act. And the three main goals are to prioritize support for the most vulnerable Vermont students, to prepare students to be members of a growing Vermont economy, and to frame proposals that will be affordable to implement and maintain. So this is what's new and coming. So this is how I want to frame this as we move through this presentation. So Vermont now, we told you when the accountability started to change, when we moved from NECAP to SBAC, that it would take many years to get to a place where data is valid and reliable, that we can actually start looking at it in a really reflective way. What you see here is this, which is going to change the format of this presentation moving forward, is that the state is going to provide a report card. Melissa Sunkel attended the training. Mr. Colkeen is receiving the emails from the state. We're hoping to see the annual snapshot at the start of the new year. That's what they've told us, and so we're looking forward to that. You see the 5 indicators, because the wonderful shift about the Vermont's accountability system is that it will reflect 5 indicators, where we used to just get 1 piece of data. Now we're looking at 5. So these are the 5 key areas that will be included in the snapshot that you're going to be receiving when we move forward with these presentations. So again, the 5 indicators are academic proficiency, that's where your SBAC data will be, and your science data. Personalization, high quality staffing, safe and healthy schools, and investment priorities. So again, so tonight this is the last round of meetings set up in this format. In a very simple way, we're giving you an overview of what this snapshot looks. We're not taking apart data, we're just going to get a nice overview, knowing that we're going to be getting this report card soon. Another part of the state's plan is the continuous improvement plans, and the goal is that every school has a continuous improvement plan that's linked to our district continuous improvement plan, and it's aligned with the Vermont educational quality standards, and it's based on data to make decisions. Something you're going to hear from all 3 principals tonight is a new Vermont phrase. It is called change ideas. And all it means is that when you have your big plan, what's the 1 or 2 things you're really going to focus on this year? And so the principals are going to highlight their change ideas that they're focusing on this year from their plans. We also want to remind you that every school is required to have a multi-tiered system of support, which is important to us in Vermont. We like to look at the whole child. So we like to balance our educational approach between behavior, social emotional learning, and academics. And to remind you that a big part of our Tier 1 in Vermont is around proficiency-based learning and the requirements that have helped us to support our Tier 1 piece. So the next thing you see, this is the SBSU board meeting, saw this presentation first. So you have a snapshot of the district just with the SBAC scores for math. And then you also have a district overview of ELA. We also felt comfortable because attendance data, we house that ourselves with Infinite Campus, so we felt very comfortable giving you a snapshot of the overview of last year's attendance, which you see in your board packet. So this just gives you the perspective of last year. So the district continuous improvement plan has 5 goals. The first one is goals for ELA, academic proficiency. Goal 2 is around math and academic proficiency. We have a goal 3, which is around school climate and safe and healthy schools. It's about creating a positive learning environment, and we'll be looking for a decrease in behavior referrals. Goal 4 is around personalization, which is directly linked to the Vermont Educational Quality Standards, and it's about revising our system to meet the needs of individual students. And our last goal is around high-quality staffing. And I can look at that last bullet right there. We currently have a committee that's working on the supervision and evaluation tool for teachers right now and administrators. So we are actively addressing and monitoring our goals. So these are the district level goals. So for the remainder of this presentation, each principal is going to spend a few minutes sharing a little bit about their data for this year, and then at the end I will share with you the assessments that we've given this coming year.
Thank you, Laura. So Bennell, hosting you tonight's up first. Our vision and expectations are the same as they've been over the past year or two. We are really seeking to foster and provide behavioral and social competence for all students in our school community. We're seeking to get there. We'll create a safe, kind, responsible, and respectful learning environment in which everyone, including adults, is a learner and all feel a sense of belonging. Student voice, strengths, interests, and student leadership will promote local and global citizenship. So this is a long-range vision. Family and community engagement in learning serves as the foundation for our success, or at least that is our vision. Our goals last year for math and ELA, we said that by June 2018, students in grades 3 to 5 will meet projected growth rates of 2 to 5% in math and reading as measured by the measures of academic progress, MAP, which equates, 2 to 5% equates to 1 school year of progress as defined by individual growth rates. And you're going to see in the next chart whether or not we met that 2 to 5%. We also said that by June 2018, 25 to 30% of students in grades 3 to 5 will be proficient in math, and 35 to 40% of students in grades 3 to 5 will be proficient in ELA as measured by the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, or SBAC. So let's see what we did. So we can feel at least confident that in math we did go to 4.7% total average growth rate in grades 3 through 5 in math. And we said 2.5%. In reading, we just made it 2.87% as our reading growth rate. So we know, and that's one of the pieces of why Hill Literacy is on board with us. And we've got some great plans for increasing that growth rate in the years ahead. And there you can see how it looks on a graph compared to the state, the SVSU, and our school. So in our continuous improvement plan, which was put together through a leadership team that worked with me over the past year, our first goal is to establish a building-based literacy leadership team to collaborate with our SVSU Hill Literacy consultant. Together, this team will lead and sustain instructional and assessment routines necessary to institute evidence-based literacy practices within a tiered model by June 2021. Second goal is to establish a trauma-transformed school through intensive and systemic professional learning from evidence-based research and practice by June 2021. That's a very lofty goal. Goal 3 is to provide K-5 students with the knowledge and skills to effectively use technology to integrate and enhance their learning across the curriculum by June 2021. So those are the top 3. So now we have to project for next year. We're going to use the same projections that we used this year, but our interventions are different, so we are hoping that our growth rate will be greater than last year. I don't have to read it because it's the same, just the one. So our change ideas actually are focused most intensely on literacy. In looking at our priorities, we've had to really make some priority focus goals. So we want to build a cohesive and consistent knowledge base. You heard from Laura that we had 82 different primary sources. We probably, I'm not going to say we had 82 different practices, but our plan is to bring that knowledge base among all K-5 staff about school scope and sequence for literacy. We all may be teaching differently, but we're going to have the same plan. We'll implement data team meetings 5 times a year to review student literacy data and confirm the effectiveness of our current interventions and determine what we need to do to move students on and in and out of tiers. That's a big piece. We will provide professional learning in how to use and analyze formative and common summative assessments to inform instruction. That is a very important piece of the work. We will develop and integrate a consistent school-wide system to document progress monitoring at tiers 2 and 3. Some of this is kind of technical information that you'll hear more about when we get into our Hill reports, but it really means many of our students are not nearly near grade level. We need to bring them up to grade level, and we need to monitor how we're doing that. We will then transfer our ELA change ideas to improve math instruction school-wide. So this same template for using assessment and progress monitoring can transfer into the math area. And then I turn this over to my colleague.
Edie,
Yes.
this is a good growth from what we've seen in past reports.
Well,
So you guys are heading in the right direction.
we're headed the right direction, yes. Thank you, Jackie.
It is.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
you're
Better
absolutely
than what
right.
I
You're
seen the
absolutely right.
last time.
They worked hard.
Wasn't me, it was the teachers.
So thank you for letting me present regarding our community at Monument Elementary School. We are a unified learning community where everyone has a sense of belonging. Our expectations at school did shift a little bit. We have reduced from 5 expectations to 4: safe, responsible, kind, and respectful. Our leadership team had met last year, did a lot of work together, and really wanted to focus in and revamp some of our PBIS systems, so that's a result. 2017-18, our goals, as you saw last year, we have projected for June of this past June, 90% of second grade students would be proficient or higher in reading, math, and behavior as measured by FastBridge, measures of academic progress, school-wide informational system, and our student risk screening scale. I certainly can report that we did not meet all those goals. However, we feel that we made some great progress. We clearly met that goal in math. We know that, thank you. We know that we are working on and learning about trauma-informed schooling, and we know that our student risk screening scale reflected that need for that work. In 2018, students in grades 3 through 5 would reach the projected growth of 2 to 5% in math and reading. That sounds familiar from what just Edie had described. And you're going to see that measurement, and we are pleased with our progress there. And then the third goal, 2018, 54% of our students in 3 through 5 in math,
and 72 to 75 proficient in ELA, as measured by the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium. And we're pleased with that. Just list a few goals. You'll see those results in the next few slides, so we can review that. So there's our growth. We're pleased with our growth. We did actually in math meet that expectation at the high level. The average of our children did grow individually, 5%. So we're really pleased with that. Our reading growth rate, 4.49. We have some work to do. Why can't we be at that 5? I think that now that we have the implementation of the Reading Street program, that's also going to affect that score, and it's also going to support the learning of our students, the growth of our students. So here's our SBAC data. We reached our goal in grades 3 and 4. We just fell short of it in 5 for our math assessment on SBAC. And again, we reached our goal for grades 3 and 4 and just fell short again in grade 5. So looking at that data, disaggregating what's happened, where are students, where do we need to improve, and where do we need to focus in our instruction. Our continuous improvement plan goals, we have 5 goals at Monument. You'll see some similarities actually in the goals amongst the schools. So particularly in ELA, which is our focus throughout the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union, across the union. So we're looking at ELA, mathematics, our tiered instruction, especially in social, emotional, and behavioral, professional learning and leadership, family and community engagement. There's where our goals lie for the next 3 years. And our change ideas. So we have many change ideas within our 5 goals that we have designated for our school and community. However, here are 4 that we're really focusing on, and they are overarching for this year. So support by the administrator to observe 2 building level and district level literacy instructional blocks, and a 30-minute debriefing session between colleagues for observation. One of the most powerful things for our instructors to do is observe one another. And that has been a conversation for many years from our instructors, and so we're looking to do that, and we're looking to do that collaboratively between Bennell and Molly Stark. Implement new academic programming, of course, Reading Street, that is a big focus, and we are certainly working on that. We're collaborating together, and we've got great support from our SU. Maintain Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction. Maintain fluid master scheduling to ensure that this instruction can happen for all children. So we have protected blocks, which we spoke about a couple, I believe it was 2 board meetings ago, of 120 minutes in ELA and 60 in math. All of our children remain during that time. That's first Tier 1 instruction, important to all. And when they're in need of Tier 3 instruction, they're receiving that in our intervention block, which is at a different time. So they're not coming out during that time, and that's really important. And it's part of the study that we talked about from the management group. And the last one, maintain regular staff collaboration opportunities, regularly review and record interventions and supports needed to meet the needs of all learners. We still have collaboration time. It is afforded to our instructors on a weekly basis. It is a little shorter this year at Monument, but when we look at our academic expectations, we're trying to fit everything in. So there's always a little give and take. And now I get to have my colleague from Molly Stark share our ideas there and goals.
So our Molly Stark vision, we look to provide opportunities for learners of all ages and stages to reach their potential. And you'll notice that our behavioral expectations match those at Monument and Bennell. We are responsible, respectful, kind, and safe. Our 2017-18 Molly Stark math and ELA goals, really what we're looking at here is a focus on our instructional practices. We really want to look at how do we leverage the greatest amount of student achievement through using research-based and effective instructional practices, alongside with how do we meet all of the needs of our learners, teach the whole child.
So we want to look at interventions for children that might have attendance needs, and also supporting the positive behavior of children so they can access the instruction that the teachers are providing. Oh, our third tier is, of course, we want to monitor consistently the effectiveness of our interventions through regular progress monitoring cycles, and then make sure that we are changing up interventions so that children can achieve the most benefit from those interventions. Our Molly Stark growth rate, based on our MAP scores in grades 3 through 5, in math, we have a 4.2% growth rate, and in reading, 3.5%. Across the district, compared to district, state, and school, we see that we still have a ways to go in the math domain to meet the achievement levels at the district or state level. So we have opportunities for growth, and we have a growth mindset. So while we're not there right now, we aren't there yet. Our continuous improvement plan goals at Molly Stark. Our first focus is our school climate. We want to ensure that Molly Stark is a place that both teachers and children enjoy coming every day to learn. Some of that work is done through our shared decision-making committee, and some of that work is done on a regular basis with our faculty meetings and developing a strong team where folks have enjoy coming to work and know one another and can rely on one another. Our second area of continuous improvement plan focus is instructional practices and resources. Our major target right now is literacy. We're working with Diana Malkin and the Hill to engage in this progress monitoring data cycle where we're not just placing children in interventions and waiting to see how it works. We're monitoring every month and then changing up those intervention groups. Yesterday, with our work in our literacy team, we found that our kindergartners have just shot right up in the first through 2-3 months of school. And some of the children that needed intervention in October are already coming out of intervention groups in early November. So using that data to really inform our practice and ensure our intervention groups are really focused and targeted, and we've matched the instructional strategy very specifically with the child's intervention need. And then our evidence collection. Oh, and I should say, in the area of math, we are also working on math. We are using our math coaching to ensure that our teachers have opportunities to observe lessons, be observed in teaching math using our research-based curriculum materials. And also, we're progress monitoring all of our children in need of intervention in math. So while our primary focus is literacy, we are also working on continuous improvement in math as well. And then monitoring our goals through evidence collection. We are a data-driven, data-focused school. And so giving teachers opportunities and time and coaching to receive that feedback about how the interventions are working on a very time-sensitive, time-constrained basis, so monthly progress monitoring of children in intervention groups. Our ELA and math change ideas, and Donna spoke to this. Thank you, Donna, because she was really some of the real force behind helping us make this change at Molly, which is a pretty big system. We revised the master schedule, and we ensured that every child has 120 minutes of uninterrupted ELA Tier 1 instruction, so everyone has the benefit of that, and 60 minutes of math. And also by creating a 60-minute intervention block, children who have that need for additional either intervention or enrichment can be pulled at that time to either receive special education services, intervention groups, or enrichment opportunities. The increased use of instructional resources and evidence-based practices. So we've had professional development opportunities and coaching, embedded coaching in our literacy tools. So our Reading Street and Newsella, as well as our differentiation strategies within the classroom, like Lexia, have been supported through our coaches. And then evidence-based practices. Yesterday in our Hill Literacy session, we actually focused on beyond just reading intervention. How do we drill down into the specific phonemic awareness skill development, beginning decoders, what do they need? Decoders that are slow but relatively accurate, what do they need? And really putting that together so teachers have this resource at hand and they can just quickly go to an evidence-based instructional manual for our very difficult to reach readers. And then use of data, so monthly, to ensure that our interventions are effective, and if they're not showing the growth that we'd like to see, that we've drilled down a little deeper to figure out what's happening for each learner in that group.
It is. So here's what we're going to need. Continued funding to support instructional practices within all areas of our continuous improvement plans. Continued funding of district specialists to build our capacity to be able to provide all that we've shared with you. The funding of personnel, resources, and professional learning for trauma-informed instructional practices that supplement Tier 1 behavior and social-emotional instruction. So you know we all work within the PBIS system, and trauma-informed can partner with that, but down the road you'll be hearing a lot more about what that means and the kinds of resources that schools will need to support those.
So the work, as we wrap up, the last piece of information we'd like to give you is the state assessments that will be given this year. You'll notice at the top, so the Smarter Balanced, we're definitely now 3 through 9. 9th grade was the first year last year. You can see the window. The state science assessment, which is not a pilot this year, will be given at grades 5, 8, and 11. The state physical education assessment, which is not a pilot this year, which is full implementation, will be grades 4, 7, and 9. And the addition is the Vermont climate survey. So if you remember at the beginning of the presentation, I highlighted those 5 indicators that the state is looking at to build their accountability system. This is another piece of information that they'll be collecting. It will be given to students in grades 5 through 8 and 10, and all adults working in Vermont schools. And it'll be an online survey that the Vermont is contracted for, and it will be given in the spring. That is the information we have right now about it. We'll be waiting for more, and you can watch the Agency of Education website as well. So if I summarize, we wanted to give you a district overview. We wanted to have each school have a chance to highlight. We want to remind you, though, that this is just a snapshot because we are waiting for the state's snapshot. So this is the start of the conversation.
Go right ahead.
This window of assessment
Yes.
is really large.
Yes, it is.
So,
And the NAEP is in there too this year. This is an NAEP year.
yes, I know.
It's an NAEP year.
I'm your NAEP lady.
I know you are.
Since that window is so long, children who take it, like, say, the first week of June, perhaps might know more than the children, or is that figured
So
in?
we're going to answer this together. They adjust, so if they have assured us that you can take the assessment, like the Smarter Balanced, within that window, and it's still going to adjust so that it's accurate with their other peers around the state. So it had the company that we, the Smarter Balanced, which if we just look at the SBAC assessment, particularly, they have assured us through our trainings that it all levels out, but that is your window to get that data, yes. But that's a natural question that comes to mind when you think about it. I
mean,
totally
it's a
understand, and
huge
that's
window.
what they tell us.
Like,
Yeah.
I would like to know for, like, last year,
Mhm.
I mean, did everybody take the test the same week in here? Or did
No.
you spread it out?
There was a
like-
window last year.
We make sure, and we have to actually, I have to verify that I could assure that all schools took the assessments within the window that they've provided.
But not the week and day and time?
No.
It would be interesting to track that information
It's
to
a great
see
question. Yeah.
if it makes a difference.
Yeah, we'll remember, we'll write that down. Thank you. Jody?
Just a fabulous report, and thank you to all the building administrators. Just a fabulous report, thank you. And it's a snapshot, but it's a valuable snapshot. One of the things that stands out to me in the state plans is when they talk about safe and healthy schools. I would really like to see some behavior data, and
Okay.
maybe the board could put this on the agenda for December, but try to collaborate with you on the timeline that you're working with too, with the state and with other reports.
Great.
But one thing that stands out in my conversations with community members is the safety of our schools. And of course, that always drives
Yeah.
all of this, all of the learning, all of the academic data. But it's personal for someone like me who you know, who left teaching in the district to pursue, to go somewhere else, not for myself, for my child. So I really would like to know what we can do to help promote safe and healthy schools.
And Jody, to piggyback off that, one of the things that I was struck by in Principal Dunn's initial presentation was the discussion of trauma-informed schools. And so as we have that discussion about behavior data in December or January, would also like to hear more details about what that looks like.
December may be more driven by budget discussion. So
Fair enough, yeah.
Could be more January.
Yep.
I just want to give very quick feedback on the Lexia program that somebody mentioned just briefly. The feedback from the students is they love it, and they're doing it at home. And I think any of the programs that you use in the schools that we can access at home to continue the education at home in their spare time rather than having them do Minecraft or something else. It's nice to have them doing something that they're working on at school, and we know that they're actually tracking progress. And I'll hear a holler from the end of the hall, "I'm on level 12," and then comes home from school and he has a printout of a certificate showing that he leveled up. And I think that's great. And in the past there have been other programs that they did that with, but Lexia apparently is super, really good. But that's parent feedback too. That's not just my son. There's other kids.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also, thank you to Melissa too and all her work on that. I don't know if you got included in that. Yeah, Pat Conway. Yeah.
Well, thank you to everyone for all your work around that.
What do you want to do on the agenda next?
Well, let's pause the superintendent's report and let's jump up to Green Lantern Solar, please. So Ralph, you're welcome to have the floor. And if you could just reintroduce yourself, please, for anyone who's watching and anyone here.
Yes. Hi, good evening. Ralph Myman with Green Lantern. Thank you very much for letting me speak with you this evening. I was here at your last meeting, which was in early October. And at the last meeting, we discussed a proposal that we had given to SVSU as a whole and then individually to each of the districts to become off-takers or net metering customers in a solar array that we're developing on the Maple Grove Road landfill in Pownell by the transfer station. And we, not at that meeting, but like immediately afterwards, I sent to both the superintendent and to Renee a draft net metering agreement, which I understand had been looked at by your attorney. And I think the feedback only came in this evening or this afternoon, so it was extremely last minute. I understand, obviously, that this is just not it's not possible to discuss the contents of the agreement or the attorney's recommendations. But I wanted to, I heard just a couple of details quickly from Renee earlier about where the attorney or the attorney's comments were trending. I haven't seen them yet. I'd be very curious to see what they are. But one thought I wanted to leave with you, take this opportunity to share, is that I believe from what Renee said that the option came up of using an RFP process, in other words, putting out inclusion in a net metered array to competitive bid or public bid, to have multiple solar developers each submit their different respective proposals to the district or to SVSU. And I can totally understand why you as a board, any school board, any select board might want to consider doing that. Typically for any kind of capital projects, any kind of contracting, you do put the need out to public bid and then solicit bids and try to come up with the best one that is in the best fiduciary interests of the taxpayers. And so that, I've been in this conversation many, many times with different solar projects. In this particular case, I just wanted to underline a couple of things that I'd like you to think about if that comes up in later discussions about this. One is that we have a project and we have the permit for it. And we have not received the permit yet, but we know it's coming relatively soon. There have been no serious objections to it. We've heard back from Green Mountain Power that the local circuit can accommodate the array and so forth. So we're going to go ahead with it. And as soon as we get our permit, we have 1 year to complete the project, so the clock starts ticking. We can't get it financed unless we have net metering customers. So there will be a relatively compressed process ahead of us, and we will have to go with whoever signs up for it in order to get it financed and build it within the statutory limitations of our permit. And I would, because it's on municipal land in Pownell, I think it would be really great and really appropriate for the beneficiaries of that array to be local schools and other municipal entities. But we'll be faced with the dilemma, if an extended RFP process is kicked off, we'll be faced with the dilemma of trying to wait for that process to complete, submitting a proposal, hoping it gets accepted, and meanwhile, the clock will be ticking on our permit. So that's one thing I wanted to say. The other thing is that, when you think back a few years, there were very substantial incentives to do these types of projects in Vermont under the net metering program. Those incentives have dropped considerably. And so, as they have dropped, and so, for example, compared to 2015, the incentives that we look at per kilowatt hour for these types of projects have dropped more than 30%. So with that reduction in the economic value that these arrays produce, we are not able to pay as much land lease to the landowners. We're not able to pay as much money to net metering customers as an incentive to join, and so on and so forth. Because other costs, like insurance and things like that, don't shift, they don't change. So some people may look at what we've proposed and say, well, that's not a very good deal, because 2 years ago we saw something that was much, much better. So beware of that, that's all I'm saying. The economics of the whole area have been squeezed, and the result, there's not a lot of incentive to wait, because the incentives keep going down further. Another thing I just want to emphasize quickly too is that suppose you did put this opportunity out to public bid, and 2 or 3 or 4 other solar developers in the state submitted their proposals. Because of the fairly tight and absolutely fixed state-mandated incentives that we're all dealing with, if somebody were able to come up with a slightly better deal, you'd be talking about maybe over the course of a year, and specifically for the BSD schools, for Molly Stark Monument in Bennington, you might be looking at $100 or $200 better in terms of annual benefit paid to the school district. And you just have to ask yourselves, is it worth going through a whole RFP process with all the time involved and the people who have to review the proposals and get back to the respondents and so forth to gain $100 or $200 a year over a period of time? So I'm just putting that out there. There are other things we could discuss, but you probably want to look at the attorney's recommendations and then see how you want to go further. The last thing I want to say too is that I live in Brattleboro, and I really live in the same world as you do. My kids go to WSESU schools. My youngest goes to Green Street Elementary. I'm on the Energy Committee in Brattleboro, and I've been on the Finance Committee, and I'm a town meeting representative. So I live in the same sort of day-to-day world as you guys. And I wouldn't be proposing this kind of net metering opportunity to school boards and towns and fire districts and so forth if I didn't think it was a reasonable deal. And so, there's really, they all bear scrutiny, right? The contracts, the proposals and so forth all need to be looked at. But I'm absolutely confident that we're offering SVSU about the best, most robust net metering arrangement that you can find out there. So I don't think the RFP process is going to turn up anything a whole lot better. So anyway, thank you for letting me speak. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can wait.
So, well, Ralph, I have 2 questions, please. I don't know that any of us have yet heard the feedback from the attorney. So these questions are based on the group net metering agreement that you had sent, and that might help inform our conversation. So I'm looking at page 7, section 12A2, and it reads, the section is of events of default, and this says, with respect to the customer fails to make any payment on the due date therefore, and such failures continue for a period of 10 business days, and so on. Could you just clarify what payments that refers to? It was my understanding that there would be no payments from BSD to Green Lantern.
Oh, that's a very good question. So you would go from having one invoice a year related to your electricity, which is your GMP bill, to having 2 invoices a year. You would continue to pay your GMP bill as you ordinarily do. Except on the bill itself, there would be a net metering credit line that would go up and down, depending on the time of the year, based on the value of the credits that were produced. And then you would also pay a monthly invoice to us, where you're basically buying those credits for what we propose 90 cents on the dollar.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's it. And we would bill you based on actual credits used as opposed to some, estimated or fixed.
Right, okay, thank you for that. And then the other one is on page 12, section 23. It's fees and expenses. Each party will bear its own fees and expenses incurred in connection with the preparation, negotiation, and execution of this agreement. Is that simply a reference to attorney's fees?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Or copying or whatever.
That sort of thing, okay. Any other questions from the
have
board?
one.
Please.
So the agreement is for 20 years, but we only get the benefit for 10.
Well, no, you get the benefit for the 20 years, or even extended if it gets extended. The difference is that the value of a net metering credit is bumped up by what's called the adjuster. In this particular case, for this array in Pownell, that adjuster is 3 cents on top of what's called the blended residential rate of electricity. So currently, that's 18.417 cents. That's the value of a net metering credit. And the state guarantees that positive adjuster for 10 years. Then what happens is that after 10 years, the value of a net metering credit drops to the price of electricity. The difference, though, is that you're still buying those credits at a discount. So there's still an advantage. It's just not as big.
And this has to be for 20 years?
Yeah, and the reason is that we have to get 20-year debt because the arrays have at least a 20-year lifetime and longer. So our lenders want to see net metering customer agreements in length that match the length of the loan.
Well, I had the same question as Chris about the payments, but you answered that question. Confidentiality, section 28, page 12. Since we are a public entity, we are bound by law to release information.
So that's why the second paragraph there refers to public entities, because we know that this is all public record.
And I hate these.
I read that one all the time.
Any other questions?
So to clarify, you're reaching out to the entire SVSU with this proposal?
Yes.
Okay. Within the SVSU, different districts can opt in or out depending on what their boards choose?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So then within that statement, if we opted in as I'm assuming we would go for 4 buildings because we would probably do central office as well. I'm looking specifically at page 6, section B, exclusivity. So I'm assuming if we went into a contractual agreement with you that it would be for the 4 buildings. If we were to put up an additional building during that time, would we have to would the additional building, A, be welcome into the contract, or would they have to go onto their own power bill separate?
Would the additional building
If we did
have its
something
own-
additionally?
Would an additional building have its own separate meter?
I don't know. Probably, I would assume so.
Because the thing is, once the array is fully subscribed, 100% of its net metering credit output will be
Okay, so it wouldn't qualify.
allocated. So we would have to find a separate
Yep.
array.
Right.
But
But would we be in breach of contract if we had a separate building while we're in contract with you? Because you said we're not to use anything else.
oh, not at all. You can't split a meter, but if a separate meter, maybe with or without a separate account attached to it, I mean, you could go with another developer, a different array.
Just because 20 years is a long period, it's hard to anticipate where we'll be in 20 years, building capacity-wise or additional buildings, et cetera.
But you know, these are the kind of questions, we manage these types of questions in terms of, it's called group management, on an ongoing basis. And so, I'm just going to put this out there, that it's very flexible. And, you know, what could happen, for example, is that over 20, or over, let's say you build the building 5 years from now. And meanwhile, during those 5 years, you've done things to improve the energy efficiency of the buildings, so your total consumption drops. What that would do is it would create a little bit of additional capacity that's not matched by credit appetite that could be allocated to that new building. The flip side is that you might find out that you know, you go to heating with heat pumps to a really ambitious level, and you start charging electric vehicles, and so you start using a lot more electricity. You'd want to put those on different meters and different GMP accounts so that you could then get those into other different net metering groups.
Okay.
But we manage all this stuff on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm hearing nothing else. Thank you very much, Val. Thanks.
So can I ask, what would the next step be? Just shall I wait to see what you plan to do, or?
Yes, please. So maybe you can just clarify. So when you last addressed the board, there was no deadline set on the calendar, but it is a first come first served situation. So you advised us the quicker we can come to a decision, the better off we would be. So we're still operating under that advice.
And what I will do is keep Renee and the superintendent informed about, you know, when we get the permit.
Okay.
Just so you're aware of that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Drive safely.
Thanks.
So that brings us to our executive session. So can I please have a motion to move into executive session? Thank you, Meredith. I'll have Jackie as a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving into executive session, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. We are in executive session. Could I have a motion to come out of executive session? Thank you, Jackie Prue, and Meredith second. Any discussion about coming out of executive session? Hearing none. All those in favor of coming out of executive session, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No one, so the motion carries. We're out of executive session. We will get to what we talked about in a moment. So number 3, well, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which was previously published. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as published, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Jackie Prue. Could I have a second, please? Thank you, Chayla. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. It is approved. The next agenda item is finance. There was the treasurer's report that was published. Any questions or statements around the treasurer's report? It was okay. Nope, hearing none. So moving on to facilities and the Orchard Street proposal.
And of course, I'm going to recuse myself because I am an employee of the town of Bennington, the owner of that property.
Thank you. So just for a recap, as we discussed last month, there's a property on Orchard Street across the street from Molly Stark where teachers and staff of Molly park there, and also salt is stored there for the BSD. We had been using that, and now the question is up in terms of leasing it, purchasing it. Do we need it? Do we not need it? Does anyone want to make a motion with regard to the Orchard Street proposal? Dr. Kelly.
I'd like to propose that, make a motion that we offer the town $100 per month plus utilities to rent the properties. 100 annually, excuse me. 100 annually, plus utilities, and we not take care of phase 1 of the assessment.
For what period? 1 year?
For a period of 1 year.
So Dr. Kelly's made a motion to offer the town of Bennington the rental rate of $100 annually plus the BSD paying utilities for the for the time frame of 1 year, and the BSD would not be paying for a phased 1 site assessment.
Correct.
Is there a second to that motion,
second
please?
that.
Thank you, Merity. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. So Renee, would you please carry that message to the town, please? Thank you. All right, we've done 6, 7, and 8. We partially did the superintendent's report, and we left it off with the school resource officers.
So we contacted the Bennington County Sheriff's Department, and they're quoting us the rate of $48,000 per officer, that'd be per building. That officer would come with a cruiser that would be parked at the school for the 7 hours that they are there. So Renee would be putting, you have 40,000 into the budget right now, so she'd be putting additional $110,000 into the budget, and that would put 3 sheriffs in your schools. They would go, the sheriff pledged that they would all go through a nationally certified school resource officer training, which I believe is a 40-hour training, and that's what it is. So you will be able to see that at your budget meetings, make a decision on whether you want to keep that in the budget or not.
So,
One question. Will they be carrying weapons?
Yes, they would.
Thank you.
so we had the part of the conversation around school resource officers had to do with school safety and school security in general. Some of the comments that were made talked about we as a board had made certain decisions and endorsed certain ideas, such as not arming teachers, not having armed staff in the buildings. And so we needed to create safety in one way or the other. Just in reading about the presence of law enforcement in schools, there really, from what I've been reading over the course of the last month, there really doesn't seem to be consensus about what works and what doesn't work. There's research about what are known as soft targets versus hard targets. A soft target being a place with no sort of law enforcement presence. Hard target being having law enforcement presence, but there's some studies that suggest that would-be shooters and would-be people who would use guns in such a situation seek out hard targets, because often school shootings is seen as a way to commit suicide by cop, as the term goes. And so there's no consensus around that. There seems to be very little consensus around the efficacy of having an armed officer as a deterrent to these sort of attacks. There seems to be no consensus about the efficacy of an armed officer on the building acting in the capacity of a first responder and sort of minimizing the damage or the casualties or the fatalities. So it's hard to look at the body of data out there to get a clear picture of what we ought to do. But as I had pointed out last time, I'm sure for some students it is a reassurance to have an officer in the building, and for some students it would not be. It would be a distraction. So I put that out there, if only to share my own sort of puzzlement as to what we ought to be doing.
Well, I was at a meeting on poverty this morning, a training actually, and one of the people there works for UCS, but she also works in one of our schools. And she said the first couple of weeks we had an officer present in one of our buildings, and I guess for the first week some of the kids hid under the table, because the only interaction they've ever had with police is negative because of what the situations they live in and they have to deal with on a daily basis. And after a while, these students are coming along and they're understanding that these people are good people, that they're people they can talk to and go to. And if nothing else, to me it's worth it. I don't,
Developing relationships.
Developing community relations and trusting relationships, especially in our trauma schools, our schools that have a lot of trauma. These kids need every opportunity we can give them. And then, of course, these trauma schools have more of a chance for violence from the outside or the inside.
We don't have to discuss it this evening, but a point to consider is would our policy about access to the school for families change if we had an officer in the buildings. And we don't have to decide that tonight, but something to consider, because we really wanted to make the school safe, and we saw limiting that access as a positive step in that direction. Would we then
Loosen.
Right. Would we loosen that up a little if we had more protection available? It's just something to consider.
But aren't the parents able to access the school just as long as they're signing in?
Yes.
So we're not really restricting access to the school.
Actually, at our school, even when you're signing a child out, they have us stay in the foyer.
No, yeah, if you're signing a child out, yeah, but if you need to go in to speak with the teacher,
if you have
speak with
an
the principal,
appointment.
you just have to sign in.
We have to have an appointment.
Right, but you still can access the school, is my point.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
I think you're referring to just a more easier access like it had been.
Right.
Yeah, like where we unlock the door in the morning and open it
Yeah.
up. I don't anticipate that, no.
Okay.
No,
Because
it's too much
we're
security
talking,
in.
we're talking one officer in a large building. Yeah, I think that could defeat the purpose.
Jim, were you able to get any sort of input from the building principals about their preferences or their thoughts?
No, we're just beginning
Okay.
that. You have a Bennington police officer in this building frequently, but it's detail. And by the course I have with that principal, it works well, but it's to Jackie's point, someone who's gone through the school resource officer training, it's a different, it's not an armed guard in the building, though effectively it is, but it is someone who's been trained in developing those relationships. And the chairperson is absolutely correct that there isn't there's arguments on both sides of this, and what as we continue to secure our schools, what message does it send? I know I can tell you that Shaftesbury's having the same discussion. Pownell did not seem interested in at this point. Middle school does have a school resource officer, and the high school uses Bennington police details in their high school. So, and we attempted to do this with the town of Bennington, and it just does not have the capacity.
No,
We
they don't.
budgeted for an officer to match what they have to put into their town budget to keep that person employed, during the summer. So I'd still be open to that, but it doesn't seem that they can generate the capacity, because they can't just. It does have to be someone who's also willing to go to the. But the sheriff didn't express any difficulty with that. I think he could hire specifically for that, and it would maybe a different level of training, but we didn't really explore all of that. So just kind of got back to you with the price of what that would be.
Would there be any value in, rather than us operating in a vacuum, because, we're going to Google our own results and we have our own opinions, would there be any value in reaching out into the community and asking the community their opinion, and maybe utilizing Derek to put a poll together?
We could do that, yeah.
Or something like that, and get some feedback from the community as to, because it's new territory, but it's urgent territory. So I think to not do anything, or to allot a giant chunk of money, and not have the support from the community, but maybe to do a poll and to see if some people want to weigh in, or even create a committee, a discussion committee, a panel, a forum, I don't know, something where it's more than just us.
I like the idea of having Derek put together a poll, sort of with the understanding that it's just one metric. But maybe then, based on the results of that poll, maybe we then take the
figure out
steps
what
of-
we need to do, because either way,
I like that, Meredith.
we can, you're in budget season, and we need to start sorting
I
that
don't
out.
think you have time for forum or anything like that. It's going to be, your budget's going to need to be set by early January.
Okay.
And, but certainly we could do
Get a poll
poll
going.
out to parents. We could do maybe even separate, and staff, principals, to get more input for you to make that decision when you actually have to make that final vote. I mean, I guess all really Renee needs to hear tonight is whether do you want to include this as a line item for
Definitely.
planning purposes?
Definitely for planning purposes.
Yes, we have it in now, so
Yeah.
I figured first round we'd show you what it looks
Yeah.
like.
You can always cut it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Meredith, I like your idea of bringing the community into the
I
discussion
think
and
we need to have a
also,
voice.
also our building administrators on the social emotional
Oh,
needs,
absolutely.
behavior needs of, because I think they're different in each school and just seeing where the needs lie as well.
I think exposure, though, especially for the traumatized students, to see that
Mhm.
police officers aren't bad guys, and it doesn't have to be frightening, that they can be a
That's why,
resource.
I mean, ideally, it would be if it was a Bennington police officer here, because this is
Yeah.
Bennington School, and that's what the relationship is. We're in Pownell and Shasbury, it would be a state police officer or a sheriff, whoever would respond first. And but well,
My thoughts are, I'd rather do it than not do it.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
agree.
And, I agree. I would love to see it better, but they're short.
yeah.
They're always working short. Those guys work a lot of overtime. I can't imagine that they,
We
they're
tried,
ever
the
going to
chief,
come
the
up
chief
with
tried,
this
the
time.
town tried, the town, and the chief made a commitment, previous budget season, that they put the match into their budget, but just couldn't fill the position. So,
Whose phone's ringing?
Not that I would admit it if it was.
So the only other thing I want to talk to you about tonight is Act 46. I sent you out that email with the last minute, I want to say, my Red Sox analogy, it's, it's a ninth inning curveball from the Board of Education.
Yes.
So I received an email from the Secretary of Education. That's why I sent you all an email asking how we felt about Arlington and Sandgate joining our supervisory union. This came from last week's, one of last week's special state board meeting that they had at Mill River. A state board member put that out as a proposal. Since my email to you, and thank you to those who have already responded to me about your thoughts on it, I've come to understand that they're not talking about that happening with our regular merger timeline of July 1 of 18, but in 2020 or 2021. But it's still important. But it is going to be discussed at next week's board meeting on the 15th. So the Secretary of Education has asked that I could give any input by the end of this week. So I will compile what I'm hearing from board members. I will say right now that I've heard everything from, hey, they used to be part of us, so I guess I would welcome them to, well, you saw some of the other responses.
Yeah.
So that this is really heavy-handedness on the part of the state and the state board. You're forcing us to merge anyways, and now, by the way, we're going to throw in a couple of, towns, and your point to us is, Renee and I, Nick, Laura, we're all saying, like, well, what impact is this on central office? What's our capacity to deal with this,
Well, also, they had said that they were going to consider geography.
Yeah,
And
right.
Sandgate? Come on.
Right.
A kid on one of
45
those
minutes
back
away.
roads?
I'm thinking that it might, I'm going to blame the CDC because Mike Lawler isn't here tonight, so I think it's that's all part of their catchment area.
Yeah.
So somebody who looks at, overlapping maps, as long as they're not topographical maps, might look and say, that makes sense. Because, we also heard word yesterday that they're not too sure what to do with Searsburg and Reedsboro too, and maybe they should be looking this way with them too.
Wow.
So, yeah, but they're, like, Searsburg does send to the CDC, and Searsburg does tuition some students into Woodford, so there has been a relationship there. So I can see where they might make sense, but it's...
The CDC's is really its own thing.
Right.
But
It's
Searsburg
not-
is
it's not
closer
what-
than Sandgate.
And I'm not really blaming the CDC, so I'm sorry. I'm just saying, but I think, that might be where some of this idea is coming from, because when they look at, district maps and SU maps, and Arlington and Sandgate is, when those of you who were on the Act 46 study committee with me know that we went up there in the beginning process, met with Arlington, and there really didn't seem to be any desire on their part to come this way, and they were looking north of us for mergers. So I don't think it's going to happen right away, but I think it's important that we weigh in for because if they do it, make it out on the 15th, it would have a timeline, but not there.
So would
but the
that
other
be
thing
just the
is-
elementary, or would that require them to
So
go
that's,
to Mount Anthony?
so that's well, the question on that we have, some of us have been having, like, so, you couldn't merge us with Mount Anthony because of the law that says you
Right.
can't mix grade alignments. So how do they fit into our SU? Because they're K through 12, or pre-K through 12, and we're not. So
Arlington's pre-K through 12.
yeah, so Arlington is, so who do you merge them with? Or you just put them on the SU, which means then, so you consolidate Woodford, Pownell, Shasbury, and Bennington, take away 4 boards, make it 1, and then give us 2 more boards.
I know, it's crazy.
So I don't,
Plus Arlington has the capacity to tuition out their students to B&B.
well, we also have a school choice agreement with them. There's students from, that go this way, but it has a limited number on it. A couple other things on Act 46. So, what's going to happen? So Steve Stitzel, even though he is backed out of negotiations, he's not going to be doing negotiations for us this year. He still is our point person on Act 46, and he's the one that's had the relationship with the Agency of Education on this. I've asked for a timeline. What are we looking at if this vote goes? Because remember, they voted to merge us, but it's not a final vote. Still subject to a final vote by November 30th, though I have no reason to believe they're going to reverse that. So what will happen if that vote goes? We need to form a transitional board. The transitional board is made up of the chair and clerk of every board of those 4. So it's a committee of 8. And they will begin meeting and begin the process of getting a new merged board elected. My understanding is, so you have 2 open seats for this in March. We will still hold an election to fill those seats, for seats that will expire BSD seats that will expire June 30th, though in effect there will be work beyond June 30th. Like, one example that's been given to me is your audit won't be back, so you may have to meet again to accept the audit. So what happens if you can't get anybody to run for those 2 open seats? Well, this board has the authority to appoint someone to take that, so that you can still do your work while this transitional board is doing their work. So why I've asked for timeline, and Renee cringes when I say this, so we're told to keep moving forward with individual budgets, but how those budgets merge, we're not sure yet. And we may not be voting on our individual budgets in March. They may have to be a special vote for what this merge budget will look like sometime in April. That's all speculation at this point. That's why I'm asking our attorney. I need a definitive timeline. He's working with Donna Russo Savage from AOE to give us what that would look like. And when do we warn a vote for this transitional board to become a permanent board? And then the thing I want to say, I think the chair had asked a question about this whole thing about this new board being 2-2-2. Who do we appeal to? Who's the person that we can talk to that we're not happy with this? And the answer I got from the district attorney is our district attorney is our district's attorney, not the district attorney. Steve Stitzel, I'll use his name. So is that the statute gives the final authority to this decision clearly to the state board.
That's not right.
They are the authority to make that up, and they're the ones that, if they vote on it, and as I'll repeat myself here, when I went to the state board and made our case, the answer was, the statute already allows us to change that board makeup. Once the board forms, they could schedule a vote of all the towns to vote. And our argument was, why put us through that if we have an agreement of what that board makeup should already be? But there is some hint that they may try to do a workaround around it, but it would still involve a vote, and that maybe we could do before it's consolidated. So I will keep you informed of what happens, but it's still pretty much in a flux.
What about
So the-
one school, one vote? And that would give us 3 votes.
Well, there's all kinds of possibilities, but they're the
They
ones that
decided
generated, they've
essentially to
decided that
allow
this
it
is the
anymore.
model they're going to use. This is in their draft articles of agreement, and that's what
And
we.
have we counted it?
Yes.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
So I have to say, Jim, the thing that I'm struck by, both with the representational model that the state board is putting forward, the 222, and now with the, just take Sandgate and Arlington, is that I'm struck by what seems like just the state board looking for the easiest way for this to be moved off
seems
their
very
desk
flip.
and onto the
Because
desk of other people.
they're
we've
facing a deadline, and let's
Yep,
hurry up and
sure,
get it done.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
After we did such intense research and dual diligence to come up with a very thoughtful and detailed plan that is being now ignored.
Yes.
To just do the easiest thing possible.
In our presentation that we had, it was very specific that they were going to take our framework into absolute consideration with geography, because we all know what's best for our towns, and our voices would be heard, and this feels
is not feeling-
very, very different from that.
in terms of generalized feedback about the Arlington Sandgate idea, what I would say is the proposed articles of agreement that we had for the districts that would have come into this MUUSD maintains the sense of community that already exists with our SVSU, and specifically with the high school as it is.
Mirrors it. Yeah.
Yep. Every school that would have been merged together already comes together as a single body when those students reach the middle and high school levels. And I think that idea of maintaining our community is what drove a lot of the goodwill behind the Act 46 merger plan as proposed by this board and other boards in our area. To now say, and take these other schools too, whether it's to the east or whether it's to the north, ignores that and even further erodes the confidence that I think many of us had in this plan moving forward. So that's my feedback for you. And you can
Jim,
take
I don't
it
see
where
any
you will.
benefit for us at this point.
Yeah.
why does it have to be done in next June? Why can't they, I mean, they're not coming up with a decision until November. They're telling you to come up with these, every district has their own budget. And then we're gonna go to a merged budget in June? That's ridiculous. I mean, honestly, the merger shouldn't happen until 2019. They should give you a year to come up with a budget for all the districts. As a merged
I agree.
district.
And the other question
Renee.
I have too is, with Arlington having a different system than we have as far as being pre-K through 12, Sandgate has what, 5 kids?
You were non-operating.
Or no, okay, but either way, have they even been asked? Have
I'm
they
sure
even weighed
I'm sure
an
they- I'm
opinion?
sure they- I
or is
spoke
this-
with- I spoke with
or
the
are they just-
superintendent of
just spinning a
Arlington
bingo ball?
yesterday.
And they can't be happy.
And no, they're
And I can't imagine.
They're scrambling also, like, to absorb this, out of left field, last minute. And they did announce that they were going to, at future meetings, start looking at supervisory union borders. So, but I don't ever remember seeing that this was, even talked about as a
What
possibility.
supervisory union are they part of now?
They're their own.
They're their own.
Yes.
The two of them together.
Yeah.
They
'Cause-
were 3.
Yeah, they're, right. The other stumbling block that would be for us, but again, this wouldn't have to happen now, is one benefit that we have, we share a teacher's contract, except for Woodford. Woodford's not under our contract, but we're talking 3-4 employees. So that would be easy to deal with.
Yeah.
But we looked quickly yesterday, and Arlington has about 100 employees that we would have to absorb, who are under a different contract.
Different contract, right.
So that, the impact bargaining on that would be, yeah.
How many
different
Arlington students, high school students?
I believe there's
typically
200
come
at the
to-
high school.
Typically come to the
Oh.
high school. Or middle school, I don't know, because I haven't
It's high
looked.
school, I want to say there's maybe 5 seats.
Limit of 10.
10, a limit of
10?
10.
Limit
Yeah,
of-
limit of 10.
A limit of 10, but how
Yeah.
much of that do they take advantage of? Only about 5-ish?
I don't think it
And that's
fills up.
only at the high school level,
Yeah,
not middle
and
school?
there's a specific application deadline, it's like March 31st, you have to apply to do it.
And how many of our kids go to Arlington?
Off the top of
We
my
have the
head,
same
I don't know
We
that,
do?
yeah. Yeah.
Agreement, yes, we've
Yeah.
had this for years. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
the
generally, is that a geography thing? That ends up bringing you to
Geography thing.
Mount Anthony?
It could be a program offering, a sport offering.
Oh, okay,
really,
so it's various
that's
issues. Okay.
Why somebody has an interest. It could be a musical band.
Sometimes
your parent
parents take
All
their
your
kids to
parents.
Arlington
Yeah.
because it's,
The drive.
it's
the commute.
smaller,
Let me just
School.
check and see.
and they don't want them.
Some
All right.
work there.
Anything else on Act 46? Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Culkin. All right, so moving on to the chair's report, just want to make a statement about the Green Lantern Solar. So certainly, there is benefits to going green in terms of the energy use of the schools. But it's the consensus of the board that there are so many moving pieces at this time, not the least of which is the merger that we've just discussed. But we have fiduciary responsibility to find the best deal for our energy consumption. That would include an RFP. And even though maybe the Green Lantern is the best solar deal in town, it's certainly not the only alternate energy possibility that's out there. And so it was simply felt that with the amount of time that it would take to create the request for proposals and then to vet all those proposals that came in and to go through that process, as well as to incur all the legal fees that would come with that, it really starts to eat into the savings that might be present. Additionally, 20 years is a long time, and the rate of increase and improvement in the technology with regard to energy creation just keeps getting better and better and better. So what seems like a good deal now might be a terrible deal even 5 years down the line. We don't know what our building needs are going to be down the line, so it's difficult to want to tie into a 20-year lease. And although I think the board is always looking for ways to save the taxpayer money and to be responsible in our energy consumption, at this point, we're not going to move forward with the Green Lantern solar net metering proposal. Maybe the new board that comes along as a result of the merger, maybe that board will want to take another look at things. But in terms of the BSD, this is not something we're going to be pursuing at this time. So that's it for the chair reports. The last agenda item is the FYI. The SVSU student enrollment was attached to the packet, as was the budget status report. So any questions or statements around either of those? Hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Oh, wait a minute.
Yes?
When is our budget meeting starting?
We didn't start last year until December. So I'm working on the SU now. I have met with, I think I met with all of the administrators for the BSD, so we're piecing things together.
So do we expect our December meeting to be a budget meeting? Or are we going to have a regular meeting and a budget meeting?
Because you're the first one up, you may have two meetings. I would plan on having your regular meeting in December and a budget meeting more mid-December.
Okay.
So at this point, we don't have agenda items that we've already discussed for the December meeting, so please be in touch with me. Yes.
Yes, could we please have building principals prepare some behavior, social emotional data,
Yep.
just to help us understand the needs based on the reports we
So
saw?
we talked about pushing that to January because December will be so much about budgeting and what our needs are going to be.
But we may have to budget
But it
for...
sounds like we're in two separate meetings?
So from my recollection from last year, our December meeting on the first Wednesday, although it wasn't consumed by budget stuff, it was definitely that was the theme of that meeting.
Okay.
And then to have a more complete budget meeting later on in the month.
Okay.
So that I think both are going to be dominated by budget stuff.
But we should tell the principals that if they need extra resources, because
That's what we're
They're
meeting.
asking for us.
They will be in your budget proposal.
Okay.
Good,
Particularly around dealing with trauma.
good.
So a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
We'll call it Jackie Crew, seconded by Mary. Any discussion about that? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.